Okay, so you see back care and yard work on the screen. Give me a thumbs up if you see that. Beautiful. Okay, we'll start. Very good. First of all, thank you for joining me. My name is Agnes Schreider. I'm a physical therapist at ACAC at the Crozet location. We are in a little bit of my backyard here for this workshop on back care and yard work. And there'll be a fair amount of demonstration, but thank you for coming. There will also be some question and answering at the end, so you can type in your questions and we'll address all of those at the end. Okay, and there will be a little class participation as well. So we'll move along. So our learning objectives for today are to understand some common back injuries, learn some methods to protect your back, learn some safe ways to move. That's the spinal ergonomics. Hold on, we got somebody else coming in. Oh, question. No, we're good. Avoid some very, very common mistakes while doing yard work, and learn some back stretches while you're doing the yard work to protect your back. And most of all, learn how to take care of your back throughout your entire life. Most of us are pretty good about taking care of a little ache here and a little ache there with our back, but it's the continuous episodes of back care, of back pain, that we want to improve and hope to prevent with this workshop today. Why is this relevant? Well, 80% of Americans will have at least one episode of low back pain in their lifetime. Most Americans have more than that. It's the most common job-related disability. It's the leading contributor to missed work days. And most people who have back pain will either take over-the-counter medication or they'll take some prescription medication as well. Okay, most people will have more than one episode of low back pain in their lifetime. And if you've ever, and you can raise your hand, if you've ever hurt your back before, me included, you know how debilitating it can be to be functional in that moment when you have back pain. If you hurt your hand, or even if you sprain your ankle, you have another hand, you have another foot. But if you hurt your back, that really can put you out of commission for a little bit. It affects every aspect of life. There's lots of types of back pain, as seen in this slide here. It is not in the scope of this particular workshop to go over each of those. That would be a workshop in of itself, and I'm happy to present that if there's interest. But I wanted to list the variety of types of back pain, and they're all a little bit different in how they present. So it can be a little confusing if you have pain in the back. In addition to all those types of back pain, there's other ailments that we can have that refer pain to the back. And what that means is I might have an infection in my body somewhere else, but I have low back pain. Okay, I might have a tumor. These are pretty extreme things. Kidney stones are huge referrals to the low back pain. If you have an abdominal aortic aneurysm, that's pretty right in the center in the front, but that refers to back pain, as well as fibromyalgia and endometriosis. So there's other things that can make a diagnosis of low back pain, a musculoskeletal diagnosis of low back pain, a little difficult for the physician. And there's some other contributing factors to back pain. If we are in prolonged postures for over time throughout our lifetime, think of an office worker, for example, an accountant who maybe has a 30-year career as an accountant sitting over a computer, that lifestyle would certainly contribute to low back pain. There's also repetitive non-optimal motions. Think of a factory worker who maybe is on a car assembly line. That person doing the same task over and over and over again is going to have some low back pain, because there's an imbalance of how we use the muscles during all those years. And in being in those non-optimal positions, there's a loss of flexibility and also strength. Okay, so your occupation, whatever it may be, can also contribute to low back pain. And there's even other factors to consider. Lack of exercise. If we gain a few extra pounds over the COVID-19 period or throughout the winter, aging certainly plays a part. And also trauma, things like car accidents, falling off a cliff, those types of things. So as far as treatment, I just want to show this slide that there's a myriad of treatments out there for low back pain. People tend to choose lots of things, and those are listed there. Obviously, as a physical therapist, I'm using the physical therapy, but there's, and it's changed over the years, the various types of treatment for low back pain. Going down to the bottom of the list, you can see behavioral changes. In a recent study, that was the number one treatment to improve back pain, was behavioral changes. And of course, that's the hardest thing to change, right? Is how we behave and what our habits are. So one of the things that we'll address in this workshop is some behavioral changes in how we do yard work. So how do we take care of our back? You're taking care of your back now by participating in this workshop. We're going to look at posture in yard work, exercises, stretches, using proper ergonomic techniques, joint protection, and just how to create a balance for the spine and muscles. So the next thing we're going to talk about are principles of the spine and ergonomics. So I'm going to switch the screen and stop screen sharing and go into some demonstration. So first thing we're going to do is go over some lifting principles. And one of the things we want to talk about when we go over lifting principles is the base of support. So I'm going to switch the camera around a little bit so you can see my feet. Okay, so when my feet are together, that would be a narrow base of support. And this base of support here, as you can tell if I was balancing on a beam, is pretty unstable. Okay, so when we go to lift something, we want to take a wide base of support, and that's having the feet wide apart. Okay, we also, as we go down to lift something, we want to keep the back straight. Okay, so I'm lifting with my legs, keeping the back nice and straight. Whatever the object is, I'm going to keep it nice and close to me. So I'm going to come up like that. Okay, I'm going to switch my camera around just a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to go, I happen to have a bag of cat food here. Usually it would be mulch, but we didn't have a bag of mulch. So this is fairly light, but this is my bag of cat food. Okay, so if I was to lift this from the ground, just pop it down. Okay, I'm going to take up my wide base of support. All right, and I'm going to keep my back straight, pulling my core. So I'm using my leg muscles. I'm going to keep the object close to me, lift it, and as I lift it, just hug the object and straighten up. Okay, so why is that important just to do that? Well, our leg muscles they're the large power muscles. Okay, and we want to use those muscles, as we're lifting. Okay, rather than the most common example of what people do is just lift up like that. So if I lift like that, that's using my back muscles a lot. Now think about doing that day in, day out. It doesn't matter if it's a bag of mulch or pet food, or if it's a grocery bag or something light, a piece of clothing. Think of the spine similar to a piece of wire, okay? The more repetitive we bend that wire, the more stress is on it and it will break. Okay? Same thing with our spine. All the repetition that happens throughout our lifetime takes a stress on the spine itself. Okay? So we want to, moving forward, to protect our spine, is reduce the stresses on it. Okay? Reduce the number of times we bend over and pick something up like that. Okay? Another reason to keep the object close to your body is because if this bag of cat food weighed 10 pounds, it's right now when I hug it, it's 10 pounds of stress on my low back. Okay? If I hold and carry the bag of cat food out here, it's 100 pounds of stress on my low back. So just that act of keeping it away from my body multiplies the stress on my low back. So whatever it is, your groceries, cat food, bag of mulch, whatever. You can apply these same principles that we're going to talk about today in your household tasks as well, such as vacuuming and things like that, house cleaning, okay? Take the stresses off the back, okay? So that's some of the principles of lifting. Just to reiterate, wide base of support. We keep the back straight as we lift. We keep the object close to us, okay? And lift like so, all right? Another way you can change your base of support, and we'll talk about this when we use the weed whacker or trimmer, is to have a diagonal stance. One foot is in front of the other. When this happens, we have better balance, okay? I'm pretty stable, and this comes into play when you're on a bank cutting grass or using the trimmer or even weeding. Okay, so taking a diagonal stance, and I can even lift up the object from the ground still with that nice diagonal stance. I keep it close to me and lift like so. Okay, so there's a couple other lifting techniques I want to demonstrate for you today. So another one is called sort of a lift and carry, and this is for objects that are heavy. So think of a really big bag of mulch. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate from the side. Bags of cement, things like that. So in this manner, if the bag was on the ground, or it could be a big crate, a big log, anything like that, and I'm fairly small, I'm 5'3", I don't weigh too much, but say the object weighs about 60 pounds, I can still lift this just by using a little bit of leverage. Okay, so I'm going to lean forward, my back is still straight, I'm going to use my arms for the first part of the lift, and I'm going to get that object on my legs. So right now I've used my arms, okay? And now I'm gonna straighten out my back leg, and I'm gonna lean forward, letting the heavy weight pull me forward. So I'm gonna come up like that, still using my legs. I'm gonna come forward, and I'm gonna stand up, okay? So I've now lifted the bag without any stress on my low back. So this comes into play with big bags of mulch. We're going to move our camera. The wind's blowing pretty fiercely out here. Big bags of mulch, bags of stone, rocks, things like that. Okay? You can't see it, but Angela is really working hard to hold the umbrella so I don't have glare. Just a little technical challenge here. It may be okay to probably just to put it down now with the clouds. Yeah. So that's lifting. All right. So just having some fun here. Before I move on, I neglected to talk about equipment. And so even for simple weeding, if you wouldn't mind just rolling that up. Yeah. So a couple things to have in play, and people don't think about it. They're like, oh, I'm just going to go and pull some weeds. But really, what I want to teach you is some things to take care of your spine for the rest of your life. And so if I know I'm going to even do simple weeding, knee pads. Okay, they're kind of big and goofy. My kids laugh at me a lot with them, but boy, it sure makes things feel a lot better afterwards. The right kind of gloves. If you're going to wear jeans, have nice loose jeans. These jeans are about a size larger than I normally wear, just so I can squat all the way down without any restriction and then come back up. So no restrictive clothing there. And also, your shoe wear is very important. I can't tell you how many injuries I've treated where the person was mowing the grass or weed whacking and they slipped on a bank because they were wearing about some 5 or 6 year old tennis shoes, and the shoes didn't have traction, and so they had a nice big foot injury or other leg injuries and back injuries. So the equipment that you wear, your clothing, gloves, long sleeves in case there's little copperhead snakes out there, and knee pads are really important. These knee pads are great. They also have those foam pads they sell in the store for kneeling on rocks and things like that. So those are very helpful as well. So your equipment. Okay, so now we're going to move right along into other types of lifting. Excuse me. Let me get a little sip of water. There is lots of blowing pollen out here. So this is the first time I've done this presentation outside, and it's kind of fun. Okay, so I have my list. We're going to go through these again. There'll be lots of time for questions at the end. Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to start with are rakes and using a trimmer. So this is very, very common. the way most people rake is similar to this. Not everybody, but a lot of people. We find a spot of leaves and we just rake away. And you can see my feet are planted and I'm doing a lot of twisting. And then we might move over to another spot and we rake away, right? So the problem with that is your feet are planted and you're getting a lot of twisting or torque with a little resistance of those leaves as you're pulling them up, okay? So that's the stress on the back. Also, the further away your work is from you, so the end of the rake is there, my low back is here, there's more forces on the low back. One change to make is simply keep the feet moving wherever you're raking. So it's a lot of stepping to it. I'm stepping back. I'm keeping the rake fairly close to me, okay, as I'm moving around, okay? The other thing we're going to talk a lot, and I'm going to demonstrate in these scenarios, is balance. So if you're raking this way for a little while, maybe the next 30 minutes, switch the rake. I'm going to teach you how to be a little ambidextrous and do the other side. The spine and its muscles really likes a lot of balance. A lot of balance right to left, a lot of balance front to back with its muscles to take care of it. So there's not excessive stress on any area. Okay, so keep the feet moving. We want to keep the hips, think of keeping the hips and the shoulders and the feet moving in the same direction. You can apply this same technique to vacuuming. If I had a vacuum, I wouldn't want to vacuum way out here. I'd want to keep the vacuum close to me and my feet are always moving. Okay, my body is close to the area that I'm working on. Okay, so that's one type of rake. Finding my other type of rake. So this is another type of rake, this type here. Okay, so same thing. If I were to demonstrate from the side, we might see you all the way out here. Okay, raking like that. And if you watch me, that's a lot of arm work. And a lot of, if it's heavy dirt or something like that, it can be a lot of stress on your low back too, because whatever forces come up through the arm are going to translate down into the back. So one way to change that would be to use your legs. So now I'm going to, because I'm short, I like to choke up on my work a little bit here and get a little bit closer to where the forces are going to be generated from, okay? If I'm farther away from my work, there's more force on my arm and on my low back. So I choke up a little bit. I'm going to bend my knees. I'm going to be in that nice lunge position. And this is where fitness comes in, is we need flexibility in our hips and strength in our legs. And I'm going to use my legs. So now I'm going back and forth and the power is coming from the legs. Okay, see the difference? My back stays fairly straight. And then again, to create more balance, you work for 30 minutes on one side, switch sides, and some nice balance. So I'm getting the force and the power from the legs rather than the back. Okay, so after a little bit of gardening, the legs should be nice and tired. Gonna move to using the trimmer. So this is my son's trimmer, not mine. He chose it. I would have preferred that he use the shoulder strap that a lot of trimmers come with to distribute the weight. He never does. So, but this is a common stance for trimmers. If you watch people, they are here again, just trimming away with their feet planted in one spot. Okay, so again, you have a heavy piece of equipment. You're producing a lot of torque on your spine in this position, and just think of doing this for like 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Okay, so changes to make are just to, you can brace it against your side, or if you have the shoulder strap, that's the best, and walk. So now my hips, my shoulders, and my feet are moving in the same direction. Okay, it takes a lot of stress off the spine. Okay, another thing to do if you're trimming on a bank is this is when that diagonal stance comes into play. For example, if I was on a bank, I'd want to take a nice diagonal stance and for balance and trim, then move, go down the bank. Okay, rather than staying in one spot and trimming all the way around me and then moving on. Okay. All right. So that is the trimmer. We're moving right along. Going to move to using a hoe. So the hoe is pretty similar to the rake, the second type of rake that I demonstrated, in that you want the legs to do the force, okay, to exert the force, and that is coming back and forth like that. Okay, you set your hoe in and then pull back with your legs, keeping the back straight. Okay, so it's just, it doesn't take any longer time to do these techniques. However, it will help you. It takes a little bit of time and thought when you first start to change your habits of gardening to protect your back. But what you'll notice is that you won't be sore the next day, okay? Unless you, of course, do this for like 10 or 12 hours straight. But we're going to talk about that as well, okay? So there's the hoe. All right, we're going to move to some simple gardening, some simple weeding, excuse me. Okay, so we've already talked about knee pads, okay? Next thing you want to make sure is you have the right tools for gardening. So I'm going to show this one up close because this is my favorite gardening tool. I believe it was recommended to me a few years ago by one of my students. Anyways, it has a super sharp point. It's really, really nice for getting those little weeds that are stuck down in the ground. Okay, so that's a good tool to use. My second favorite is a short-handled pickaxe. Okay, why a short handle compared to the nice big long one? Well, I'm little, and the long big one is heavy for me. And I've also had 2 shoulder surgeries, so I want to not have a lot of stress on my shoulders. But I want to have something with a little weight in it to break up the ground before I pull the weed out. So very common to see folks weeding like this. No tools, trying to yank out the weeds out of the ground. And it might be that you go outside and you're like, oh, I'm just going to weed for 20 minutes. And then an hour and a half later, you're still doing this, okay? So a lot of stress on the back, okay? Legs are completely straight. The force is coming up. And if it's a particularly, a weed that is particularly stuck, you're going to really try to yank on that puppy and pull it out, and that's a good way to strain your back, okay? So how do we reduce the forces? Well, there's lots of scenarios. We can come down and be in this sort of half kneeling position here. I can still use my tool and loosen up the ground and then pull the weed out, okay? We never ever want to just yank the weed out of the ground, especially in this tough Virginia clay. I mean, once it starts getting hot, the ground's going to get super hard and it's going to be like cement. So always use a tool to pull it out. So this is one stance, this half kneeling stance, and this is fairly comfortable. If you look at me from the side, my back is straight. I would have my knee pads on and I can stay here. And then if I get tired, I can switch knees. Okay, not a lot of stress on the back. Another one, my favorite ones, is I got this, I think, at Marshall's or TJ Maxx or something, $5, $4. Great find. My little foldable stool. Okay, so I can be sitting on my stool and just pick a spot, loosen it up, loosen up the ground, and just weed right from there. Okay, you can kind of move around and choose your spot and take a break. So not much stress on the low back there. And then you can get up. It's also a nice little resting spot. Okay, so the stool is really helpful there. So you have your pickaxe, I highly recommend them, and your stool and your weeding tools. Okay, so I'm gonna move over to some loppers. So you see the long handle of the lopper, and I've treated a lot of shoulder injuries where people have come in about a week or so after doing a lot of tree trimming, branch trimming, okay, hedge trimming, even with the shorter sort of trimmers. And what typically happens is, again, our work is here, right at the end, the branch, right? But if we're holding the handle back here and I'm reaching and it's kind of a weird angle, all the force is going to be on my shoulders and my low back, okay? So, and if we do this for even an hour or a half hour, boy, that's a lot of strain. So a little bit of physics, the weight or force is here, you have this whole lever arm right here. The stress is on your shoulder, and you're going to feel it on your low back because you're leaning over as well. Okay, so it doesn't take a lot of use of the lopper to really bring some strain into your shoulders and back. So what can you do? Well, choke up a little bit. So just like in baseball, you choke up on the bat, you're going to choke up on the loppers to bring your work a little closer to you. Okay, so a little closer. So this is way different than this out here. Okay, you can see the difference. It's way different as far as the forces and the stress. You can do this a little bit more frequently. The other thing is, we'll talk about tools as well. Keep your tools nice and sharp so they'll work best for you. Okay, so you really don't have to use a lot of force there. So always think of choking up when you use your tools. Okay, so we're going to come over and I'm going to demonstrate a couple things with the wheelbarrows as far as lifting and also filling and dumping out a wheelbarrow. So imagine that I'm going to fill my wheelbarrow with some mulch. Okay, so say my mulch pile is right here. Okay, most people just go in and they're like this, they're bending down, filling the wheelbarrow. So I have not moved my feet at all. The torque is all happening at my low back. Okay, so a lot of that, if you have a big pile of mulch, can put a strain on your low back. So again, how do we change it? Again, I'm pretty short, so I like to choke up. I like to bring my work close to me. As far as this is not so good, so I choke up a little bit. We want to bend the knees, scoop your mulch up, keeping your back straight, applying those lifting techniques. I'm going to keep it close to me and just step and dump it in and back out again. Lift up, keep it close to me, my pitchfork full of mulch, dump it in, and then back again. So I've kept the weight fairly close to me. It's similar to that bag of cat food. I don't want it out here. I want it close to me, just right here, okay? Now, I sort of play a little game with my big pot of mulch, my mountain of mulch every year, and I'll fill in one from one side, and then the next time I go to fill it up, I'll go to the other side to create that balance from right to left, and I'll fill it from the other side. Okay, so my mulch, scooping, filling over. Okay, always creating a balance between side to side. Okay, and these may seem silly and simple, but again, a lot of it is what I want to teach you is how to protect your back throughout your entire life, not just to get through this yard project, hurt your back, and just feel better for the next couple days. Okay, because the more frequently that we injure our back, each time we injure it, the ailment becomes worse. Okay, so it might start out with a muscle strain, then you might have a little disc involvement the next time, you might have some nerve pinching the time after that. But as we age, each time we injure our back, the type of injury becomes more involved. Okay, so we teach a little bit of balance. So I have a couple of wheelbarrows in the background that you can see, and then I've got my little riding mower with a tractor. So obviously we want, when we're hauling stuff, we want to use the most efficient piece of equipment, and that would be for big heavy dirt and things like that, mulch. I'm going to use my tractor with the wagon. Okay, let's say we don't need that and we want to just use something a little smaller and handy. If I have this wheelbarrow, it's kind of nice. It's small and it fits my size, but sometimes even if I have rocks in here, it can be a little heavy. So I'm going to use that choking up technique on the handle to lift it. If it was filled with rocks and I'm back here, it's a little harder than if I was simply take one step forward, squat, using my legs. I'm choking up just like on the baseball bat, and then lift from the legs. Okay. And then remember always, after you've got to your destination, to lower down as well. Same thing. So it's all legs here. These are your power muscles, okay? Rather than bending over, jerking up on the back with a heavy weight there. Okay, so see the difference. This is not so good for the back. this is pretty good for the back. Okay, I'm using my legs right there. Okay, so this is a nice type of wheelbarrow. It only has one wheel in the front though, so it makes if the whatever you're carrying is kind of wobbly, that can be wobbly. And if you live in where I do, where there's a lot of uneven terrain, this type of wheelbarrow is really nice. It's bigger. I'm wheeling it to us because it's got two wheels that you don't have to pump up, which is another advantage. And it's very light. It's really heavy duty plastic. And because of the two big wheels you can see from the side, it's pretty balanced and it's not going to tip. And I have the option of either pushing, or if it's not so light, I mean, not so heavy, excuse me, I can sometimes I just pull it. So a couple options there. And it's also very easy to dump the stuff out. I can take my shovel or rake and just scoot the mulch out, whatever it is, or dirt, right on to where I'm planting or weeding. Okay. Beautiful. So type in all your questions. I'm just going to do a little quick check on my list to make sure, oh, I got everything. Okay, so one other way to protect our joints is, say you've been working outside for a while, you're getting a little tired, maybe you're weeding, or you just want to protect your back, lifting over and bend. You could do what we call the golfer's lift, and that is I have my hoe and I'm just going to keep my back straight and I can reach down. The hoe gives me balance and just maybe lift up something, maybe a piece of equipment, a jug of water or something like that. Okay, so again, the golfer's lift, I'm just using that. And sometimes if I've been down in a half kneeling position like so for a little bit and I have my pickaxe or my hoe handy, I'll just use that to help me get up. Okay, again, protecting the hips, the knees, and the low back. Okay, so we're going to go back to the screen share. If you go down, scroll down to the, I think the fifth little joint protection tip, it's try to avoid the little syndrome that says, I have to finish this project today. Okay, anybody who is a homeowner knows that the list of home projects, whether it's inside or outside yard work, the list never really goes down any. The items just change on the list. There's always something to fix. So that project will be there for you tomorrow. Okay, so really listen to that voice inside your head. Living in Virginia, it's wise to only weed or dig after it rains, when the ground is soft. We've had a lovely spring this year, and it's been ample time for us to, the ground is still soft, to get some of those weeds out and get some of those bigger projects done before the summer heat comes and just sort of totally dries things out. So really be smart about your weeding projects. Again, the weeding will always be there. It never goes away. We just kind of stay on top of it a little bit more than at other times. We've already talked about the tools to assist you in weeding and gardening. And the fourth tip is to take frequent breaks. So always have a big jug of water out there with you. Kind of watch your time. For myself, I know exactly how many hours I can work so that I don't have any soreness the next day, whether it's in my core work or my legs. And so I kind of stick to that, but even within that time frame, I'm taking lots of breaks, especially if we're working in the summertime. Got water, I'm walking inside every 40 minutes to get a little bite to eat, a little snack, getting out of the sun if it's a hot day, and really drinking a lot of water. And just if you're down weeding on your knees or in that half kneeling position, it's good to just get up, stand up. We're going to do some exercises in just a moment, but get out of that bent over position. Always think of balance in your spine, balance in your body to protect it. Okay? And the last thing, well, I just talked about it, is the balance in your body. Okay, so we're going to go back to the shared screen on the computer, and this is the class participation. So go ahead and stand. You've been sitting for a while, perhaps, and we're going to do some exercises. So hopefully you see me on the screen. And so these exercises I put together, there's a lot of exercises for the back, but these are the ones I put together that you could do while you were gardening. So hopefully everybody is standing. I'm going to get my little list right here. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is just to stretch out our chest. So it's just going to simply be coming back like that. This is really good if you've been bent over weeding. You want to stretch out the chest. So everybody just get as tall as you can. Just bring the arms behind you. Getting a nice stretch there. So that's a good front chest stretch. Okay. Next one we're going to do is we're going to take our equipment. I'm going to use my handy dandy hoe. And we're going to get a little front hip flexor stretch here. So I have my hoe in one hand. I'm going to take a step back. My front knee is bent a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of lean forward. So it looks like that from a front view. From a side view, it looks kind of like this. So you're getting a stretch on the front of the leg, and I'll switch legs. Getting a stretch right here. Okay? Careful not to arch your back. You can pull the core muscles in a little bit. So the hoe or whatever tool you like is good for balance. Okay, so front stretch there. And now we're going to stretch out the backside, the hamstrings. So you can still use your hoe. You can take a step back and just lean forward. So now I'm getting a little stretch on the backside, okay, for the hamstrings. And be super gentle when you do these. And then another option for stretching out the hamstrings is to take your step, and I can put my heel right on the step. I've got my hoe that I'm holding on to, and I just lean forward and stretch out the hamstrings. And you just bend forward to the point where you feel a nice gentle stretch. Don't overpower it. You just want to feel a nice stretch. The stopping point is a place where you can just hold that stretch for about 30 seconds or so. And you'd want to do a couple times each side. Now, when you're out working in the yard, you can just incorporate one of these stretches every 40 minutes or so, okay? And even walking around is good. You don't have to do them all at the same time. Again, always think of the balance. If you've been down on your hands and knees for a little bit, good time to stand, walk, do the hamstring stretches to stretch out the legs. So always just think balance, 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 okay? And then another one we can do, we can have a hoe or we don't have to. We can hold it upright and just do a side stretch, stretching out the side muscles. So just coming in like that, and other side. And again, get a nice stretch. So these are actually excellent stretches too if you've been sitting at your desk for a while. Okay, and then come down there. Beautiful. And now my next one, just make sure I've got them all. We do. Okay, and the next one involves a chair, the last one. I wanted to save this one for last because I was sitting down. Okay, so this is what we call a figure 4 stretch. It's good, great for the hips. And I'm just going to sit on the edge of my chair, cross my leg over, place one hand on top of the knee if you can, flex, and then just gently lean forward. So I'm stretching out the hip and stretching out the low back. Again, you're just going to take it to the point where you feel a very, very gentle stretch. Stay there and just breathe easy. And you can do this on both sides. So you can be here, get nice and tall, and then just gently lean forward. Beautiful. And then come back and come to standing. Great. Okay, so we're going to go back to screen sharing, and let's see if I can pop that up again for us. There we go. Exercises while we work. These are the ones we just went over. Okay, so the standing hamstring stretch, the side bend stretch, the hip flexor stretch, seated figure 4. And if anybody would like, you can email me at the end. I can send you pictures of these exercises. Okay. The key is, again, that balance. You take a break from the weeding or digging or whatever you're doing and just get a little stretch in there and then go back to work, get something to drink, and then move forward. So I put this slide in, physical activity versus exercise. because this always comes up about this time of year with a lot of my clients. I'll have clients who've done a great job the entire winter, regular exercise program, doing super, and then spring hits and they stop their exercise program because they say to me, well, it's time for me to garden. Or the other answer I get is, it's time for me to play golf. So they completely stop their exercise program and they go into these activities. Now, both of those activities, golfing and gardening, involve physical activity, but is that exercise? No, unfortunately. Physical activity is anything that any movement that uses your skeletal muscles. So pretty much it is movement. Like this is, I'm using my skeletal muscles, so I am having physical activity. When I park my car farther away from an entrance point of a grocery store, that is more physical activity. I'm taking more steps. When I take a lot of steps throughout the day, up and down the stairs, that counts as physical activity. But unfortunately, it doesn't count as exercise, because exercise is an intentional movement that's repetitive over a duration of time that increases the heart rate at a certain level, to improve your fitness. So there's a specific intention with exercise, and that fitness level that you're trying to improve has to incorporate flexibility, strength, cardiovascular training, and also endurance training. So exercise has certain components in it. Okay, so as we get to this great season of spring with lots more gardening, don't forget to do your regular exercise program. And another way to think of it is, the more you stay with a consistent exercise program, the easier your gardening will be. You'll be stronger, you'll have more flexibility, you'll have less energy output when you do the yard work, and you'll also be less tired and sore the next day. You'll be just better fit. Okay, so we're going to move on to prevention. So we've talked a lot about joint protection, spinal ergonomics as ways to prevent low back pain. We've also talked a lot about having a balance between your activities. But living an active lifestyle is also important. Getting the exercise in 4 to 5 days a week. It could just be walking, and then with some strength training is always good. Practicing posture in your lifestyle as well as with your gardening techniques is very important, okay? So it doesn't help that maybe you're at your computer 8 hours and then you go weed, bent over for 8 hours. That's not good balance. You want to have a nice balance and posture throughout all of your activities. Stretching, including stretching as well. And lastly, be smart, listen to your body. Don't ignore the pain signals that come in. It's telling us something, whether it's telling you you need to stop, or you're doing that activity incorrectly, or you're just pushing through an injured joint or spinal ache and pain. So don't push through it, okay? And that's going to help you in the long run. Remember, as we take care of our spine and our body, it's just not getting over this ailment or the one you might have next week. It's really taking care of your body throughout your entire lifetime so that you can enjoy the things that you like to do. So we are at the question and answer portion, and I think there's a couple questions up there. So let's see if I can find the chat room. And we will stop the screen share. Thank you so much for joining me today. And again, email me if you have any other questions. My email address is on the ACAC website. And I'd be happy to send you the exercises that I went over, and happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Okay? So thank you so much. You're welcome, and have a great evening.